love when coaches, consultants, and professional service providers want to do big things in their business. They want to rise to the top and influence their market and the world around them. They want to have a greater impact and make a more lucrative income. Well, if this is you, welcome to Expert in You podcast, the show where I interview other experts and coaches, consultants, so that they can share their success strategies with you. We're going to talk about marketing and how to close more sales, how to get more premium clients, and how to really build your visibility in the market and scale your business like a boss. If this is you, welcome to the show. I want to ask you to subscribe and hit the notification bell right now so you don't miss one episode. Grab your coffee and buckle up because we are ready to give it all to you to help you become the expert and get paid as the expert that you are. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Expert in You podcast. I'm your host, Ann Carden, and I am so excited for my guest this week. You are going to love hearing from him, learning from him. He's doing some amazing things out there in the world. Alan Lazaros, welcome to my show.
Thank you for having me, Ann. I appreciate it, and I will add as much value as I possibly can. Expert in You podcast. Let's rock and roll.
Well, he is the founder of Next Level University. And he also has a top podcast as well called Next Level University. So you can check that out too and subscribe to that. And I'm just really excited for you to hear everything that he has been doing. So Alan, why don't you just tell everyone what you do and what got you to the place that you are now?
All right. So it's not just the message, it's the messenger. So I'll take you all the way back. I'll try to be as brief as I can. Born into adversity for sure. Father passed away when I was 2 years old in a car accident. He was 28 years old. And I had a stepfather from age 3 to 14. My stepfather left my family when I was 14 years old. And I was just me, my mom, and my sister. At that point, my sister had just moved out. And so from a financial standpoint, this was early 2000s, and my stepfather had done well in the 90s and early 2000s. And when he left, he kind of took a lot of the income with him. So I went from upper middle class in the Massachusetts area in the US to basically I get free lunch at school now because our income is so low.
Oh gosh, that's tough.
So that was a wake up call for me, but it built a lot of character and I
Sure.
Put things in perspective. So I didn't know how I was going to go to college. So I just bootstrapped as much as I could through high school. I got straight A's in high school, 189 in honors English. Never took honors English after that, but got as many scholarships and financial aid as I possibly could. And I'm very grateful to live in a country where financial aid was available. Mm-hmm. And so I did get into my dream school. My dream school was Worcester Polytechnic Institute. It's kind of like a mini MIT in mm-hmm. Massachusetts. And it's one of the top tech schools in the world, which was awesome. So I became a computer engineer. And then I went for my MBA. And my goal was computer engineer, MBA, CEO one day of a Fortune 50 tech company. That was my goal at the time. And so then after that, I had job hopped a lot. I robot, Tyco Safety Products, Simplex Grinnell, a company called Cognex I eventually landed at. I also lived in LA for a time. So I was doing a lot of soul searching in my early 20s. And I jumped my pay scale quite rapidly. Actually, I went from 65 to 85, 85 to 105, 105 to 125. And then I ended my corporate career at almost 200. Mm-hmm. And at this point, I have no family, no kids, very low expenses. I paid off $84,000 worth of college debt in a single year. And it was just interesting because the motto at the company I was working at called Cognex was work hard, play hard. And I used to say work hard, play harder. And in mm-hmm. hindsight, what I've realized now, and I didn't know any of this back then, but in hindsight, I realized that I grew up in a paradigm with a lot of drinking. I grew up in mm-hmm. a paradigm with a lot of partying. And so my paradigm was really achievement and fun. Mm-hmm. And then I had my sort of quarter life crisis is what I call it. And this is where everything really turned around for me. So I was in New Hampshire and I got in my own car accident. So I was 26 at the time. This was back in 2016. And if you recall, my father passed away in a car accident when he was 28. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I was on the wrong side of the road. It was the bad winter up in New Hampshire where the snowbanks were covering the yield sign. and I was supposed to yield and I didn't. I end up on the wrong side of the road, and I look up and I saw what I thought was a Mack truck, big bright
Oh
lights
my
right
goodness.
in front of me. And that scared me beyond all reason. I thought for certain that was it. I thought for sure that was the end. Fortunately, I was driving a Volkswagen Passat 2004. I used to call this German engineered tank. I used to call it the tank. That was its
Some of
nickname,
those
the
are out
tank.
there, yes.
Yeah, and the tank totally saved my life. It really did. It totally saved my life. Both airbags did deploy, even though it was an old car. My little cousin hurt his leg on the airbag. I hurt my face on the airbag, but physically we were okay.
Wow,
And I've seen
that's
pictures of my
amazing.
dad's car. I've seen pictures of my car, and they don't look very different. So this messed me up mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So what I've come to realize now, even though at the time I didn't understand any of this, is that prior to 26, I was very successful from the outside in, but not successful at all from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
And I really flipped that script after my quarter life crisis. And I looked at all my regrets. I looked at all my poor choices. I looked at my drinking. I looked at my partying. I looked at my friends. I looked at who I became as a person. I looked at my core values, and I took a real hard look in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw. And so now I'm 9 years later, very proud to say that I went all in on personal development versus just achievement. And I always say that before I used to chase success and at the expense of fulfillment, and now I focus on fulfillment, and then success is kind of a byproduct of that. And that's kind of sort of my message now. And now I have a business called Next Level University and Global Top 100 show. We're heard in 170 countries, and we're coming up on 1 million listens. And
Amazing. Great job.
it's been really cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So 21 person team, 22 departments. It's wild and it's awesome, and I'm very, very grateful. And most importantly, I'm now deeply fulfilled with what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is very meaningful versus before it was just chasing success and
Yeah, it
significance.
was kind of empty.
Yeah, it was very empty. Yeah.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, I love the story. It's hard, the things that you went through, but I just believe God uses everything and he weaves it together like a fine tapestry. And he uses everything for the good. Those are my beliefs. And so I love how you have really turned this into something to help other people. And I think for most coaches and people in our industry, our passion comes from our experiences and what that can do for other people and how that can better other people's lives. And that's the way I feel about business, helping people change their life through business and success. So I love this. What were some of the first things you did when you went on a personal growth journey? And by the way, one of the reasons I really wanted to interview Alan is because he is a young person. I'm an old person. He is a young person, but I love what he stands for, and I love what he's doing out there in the world. And we just need more people like this, more people in the younger generation that can really impact the world and can really impact people. So I just wanted to share that as well. But Alan, you decided to go on a personal journey and personally grow. And it's so nice that you all in your generation have access to things that I wasn't even aware of back when I was younger. We didn't have access to all the personal growth development tools and resources and things that you do now. So I'm curious, what made you choose to do that? Was it that you felt you knew there was more? What was sort of, I get the car accident and all of that, but what was sort of that turning point, that mind shift?
For me, it was realizing that could have been the end. And if it was the end, I would have regretted a lot of my choices. And I think the pain of regret is the best teacher. I actually have come to believe that the best teacher is fulfillment and regret. Those are the two best teachers in the world. When something fulfills you, even though it's difficult, I think that's your soul saying you're in alignment. Great job.
Yes.
Like, this is what you're supposed to be doing. This is what you're called to. And I think that regret is your soul tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, that's outside of alignment. That's not aligned with your core values. That's not who you're meant to be. And there's two ways you can handle regret. You can ego up and be like, oh, whatever. No pain, no gain, blah, 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 whatever, ego up. false self type of stuff, or you can just sit with it, be vulnerable, be honest, and say, I made so many poor choices, and yeah, maybe having a tough childhood wasn't my fault, but it is my responsibility to turn this around. And so I appreciate your admiration. I do, genuinely. I often joke, I'm hoping 36 will be when I hit puberty. So if you're on video, I am 35 years old.
I know, I said he is the age of my son.
You're funny.
My daughter, yeah.
I said I'm 35, but I look 15. So welcome to the wisdom of a 15-year-old, right? But at the end of the day, in a more serious note, the personal growth journey that I went on, it's fascinating because I grew up in an environment that had no personal growth whatsoever. And I used to be bashful about that, and I used to not want to talk about that. I used to not say that publicly because I didn't want to offend my stepdad or my mom or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I've come to a point now where, there was zero personal development, zero personal growth, zero personal accountability. It was just bad. And that doesn't mean all of it was bad, but it was bad. And so, of course, right, when I found personal development, I was like, oh, this is it. This is what I've always needed. Like, you can try to change. I did some research on you, and I heard you talking about Jim Rohn quote. Jim Rohn is personal development 101. And
he was one of the first people that I ever listened to. Yes.
Same. And it's just world class. It's so good. And it's all fundamentals. And some of it is a little bit, XYZ. But at the end of the day, whether it's Jim Rohn or Tony Robbins or whoever, you're right. Back then, there wasn't a lot of access. It wasn't as prolific. And I'm grateful that we're turning that around right now. Right. So cool.
So true. So Jim Rohn was one. So who were some of the first people that you tapped into?
I went all in. So I went, every
a student and a sponge, right?
Yeah.
MBA in personal development.
I did. I Jim Rohn, Wayne Dyer, Tony Robbins,
Do you have a
Darren
favorite?
Hardy. Do I have a favorite?
Favorite?
So one thing that I will share, I think the most valuable book ever written is The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Now, I also think Darren has extremely valuable content. And if you're not into personal development, you probably don't even know who Darren Hardy is. If you are into personal development, you definitely do. I've taken some of his courses. I think he has the most valuable content on the internet. And that is a bold statement, but it's facts, I think. Now, The Compound Effect, if you're going to pick a book up, if I could give a book to my younger self, I would just slide The Compound Effect across the table. If I could sum that, I have it behind me. I always have it behind me. Mm-hmm. Most valuable book ever written, in my opinion. 160 pages, nothing crazy, but it's just the tried and true fundamentals. And it's not because Darren's so great, because, I don't think Darren's the best writer or anything like that. It's the concept. This idea that you can turn your whole life around with small, seemingly insignificant choices day to day. It is just the truth. And the internet is full of shiny objects and quick fixes and make $1 million 4 hours a week and blah, blah, blah. And all of that, in my opinion, is just crap. It's just nonsense. The compound effect is, how do you get a little better every single day? Mm-hmm. And I actually crunched the math on this. So I'm a computer engineer, and my thinking modality is always mathematics. And I've put $1 in a financial calculator, and I've put it in there for a decade at 0.1% growth per day. Okay, so if you grow by 0.1%, now remember, this is 1/10 of 1%. Mm-hmm. So if you grow by 0.1% per day, you end up 34 times better. You can do the math, 34 times better at the end of the decade. And then if you continue for another decade, you end up 34 times more than that, which in 20 years is 1,444 times better. 1,444 times smarter. 1,444
How do you measure
times.
that, though, Alan? Let's be practical here. How would you measure that?
How would you measure that? You could do it in a bank account if you wanted.
Well, that's true. Definitely that's math. Money is a scorecard. Yeah. But if we're talking about personal development and personal growth, and we don't look at money, maybe somebody isn't in business, or they're, how could you measure that?
One thing that I do often is I try to go back and I look at old photos. I look at old content. Okay, so I've our podcast has 1,600 episodes as of today, actually. So yeah, I think today is our 1,600.
A lot of
actually.
episodes.
It's many. And my goal with each episode was to help our listeners get 1% better and for us to get 1% better. In this case, 0.1%, because 1% is easier to understand but harder to do. And so when I look back at the old episodes, and they're awful.
Isn't it interesting? I have to say the internet does not lie when it comes to looking at your old stuff.
Oh, it's bad.
I laugh
so bad.
about that too. I'm like, oh my gosh, look at that. Even just inner shifts and things that go on, and energy shifts even. It's crazy to look back at all of that. Yes.
So that I ask all the listeners, my listeners, your listeners, the picture how amazing you are now, and you are amazing in your own unique way, whatever that is. Okay. Especially if you're listening to this, you're into personal growth, you want to get better. Now picture if you really put in the work and you were consistent and you focused on improving a little bit each day, imagine what you are now. Imagine what you are now. Imagine that 34 times smarter, 34 times wealthier, 34 times more fulfilled. And it's not hard when you see these transformation photos to realize that.
Right.
Yeah, the transformation photo, I have some photos of me prior to my car accident. I mean, one in particular that I used, I was just a miserable human being. I was smart. I was doing my quote unquote best. I had trauma from my childhood I hadn't dealt with. I was just a miserable human being. And you don't know that until later on when you grow through so much of that stuff. And I think that's the fascinating thing about life is, you think you know stuff when you're 10 episodes in, and then you realize at episode 50 that you didn't know anything in comparison. And then at episode 1,000, you realize you didn't know anything in comparison. And so that's really what it is. And so I don't know as much as
until you get my age.
I'm sure that it continues to compound.
No clue, Alan.
Yeah, exactly. Because it exponentially compounds. And so I often say I'm way smarter than I was at 32, but not as smart as I planned to be at 36. And I think that's the goal, is just keep getting better and keep getting better. And the last thing I'll share quickly is when I was younger, I call it the boulevard of broken dreams. I mean, genuinely, no one had goals and dreams growing up. No one. I mean, it really was no personal growth. And again, small town, it is what it is. Now, and I don't want to offend anyone, but I got to call a spade a spade. All right. So that said, I looked around and everyone seemed so miserable to me. And I was a naive kid who was like, why don't more people chase their dreams? Why don't more people do more? And now I realize self-belief. I had a lot of self-belief and that kind of thing. But
and just your environment and what you're exposed to is a huge piece of that.
The people that came to me and they said, Alan, these are the best years of your life. And I remember I was like, I hope not. Right?
No.
High school was awful.
Yeah.
But now I realize, those were the best years of their life. Got it. Because they didn't keep getting better.
And they never got out of that. Right.
Yep. And so now I know, and again, I'm only 35, but you realize these things and you go, I'm 35 years old. And my parents, when they had me, were younger than I am now. And they weren't grown at all. I mean, holy crap. So children, having children and at the end of the day, I think personal growth hopefully is the solution for all of us.
Well, I think it's amazing to me, the access that the younger generation has. And even if we look at like success, there's 1,000 new millionaires a day in the United States.
Nice.
And you look at all of that, and it's because of what people have access to. They don't have to try to figure everything out themselves, whether they hire a coach or whether they go on a journey to find the answers. The answers are out there. The answers are there. And it's just a very different world, but also things are moving very, very fast. And sometimes I think that has created another set of problems in people, like anxiety and just a lot of things, a lot of trauma that goes on, and a lot of comparison, things that we didn't necessarily, I'm really aging myself here, but things that were just not the same when we were growing up. So it has created kind of this different set of challenges, I think, as well. And you kind of have to keep up or you get left behind.
Yeah, it's moving faster. And I always joke playful joke, but very true. There used to be keep up with the Joneses, and now
Right.
it's keep up with the Rock, and
True.
it's just not fair. And so,
Right.
self-worth will get crushed if you're not
Mm-hmm.
careful, especially because I call it the inverse 10 rule.
Mm-hmm.
If people look really successful and they're trying to look really successful, they're actually 1/10 as successful as you think. And if people aren't trying to look successful, they're probably 10 times more successful than you think. I have some mentors that are very, very, very wealthy, and you'd never know it. And that's actually why they're wealthy, right?
True. Yes.
And then vice versa. I have some people that have, 500,000, followers, and, and they're actually broke and don't really make any money. So it's, I think it's scary. It's scary because on one hand, we have access to all the information, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But we also have access to all the glitz and the glam and the BS that come with that. And I've coached enough people at this point. I just surpassed my 5,000th coaching session.
Mm-hmm.
And people from all over the world. And some people are 1/10 as successful as you would think. And some people are 10 times more successful than you'd think. Mm. And very rarely do I find someone who is as successful as they are trying to portray. Mm-hmm. Usually it's an over or an under.
Yeah. Well, you and I both see behind a lot of people's inside and under the hood of a lot of people's businesses. And I do as well. And in fact, I just did a video about this. I've worked with multimillionaire businesses or multi-million-dollar businesses, but the owner was broke. Yeah. And they needed a turnaround because they were bleeding money. I mean, so yes, you absolutely have to realize that's the reality, and that's the truth of it. Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people don't know that you have to invest money to make money. And just because you hear, so we had a $74,000 month last year, but that doesn't mean that that's in my bank account. Mm-hmm. Right. And that's what people don't fully understand on the numbers side. And now that I realize, as I coach people, I realize as a computer engineer what I think in numbers. So I walk into a Panera and I'm looking at in my head, I'm crunching their net income. I'm crunching their whole income sheet. Like Panera is just a good investment. They're just going to win. They're going to keep winning. And I realize now in hindsight that not everyone has a mind that's naturally inclined for numbers and business and scale and all that stuff. So when people say, oh, I made $50,000 last month, they actually think, like, this has been wild for me. People actually think that's like 50 grand in your bank. Mm-hmm. No. It goes out just as quick as it comes in when you have a 21-person team, right? And so just because you grossed $1 million.
Well, hey, Alan, I can help you with that. I help you.
Yeah.
People be more profitable.
Yeah, well, of course. and at the end of the day, though, I think that people genuinely, and again, business people do know this, but regular non-business people, not regular, but non-business people, they really don't know that. They actually think, oh, that person on Instagram was talking about how they made 1.2 million last year.
Right.
They think they actually have 1.2 million.
Exactly. That does not make you a millionaire.
No.
Revenue is completely different. It's so interesting you're talking about this because when I worked with a lot of, multi-million dollar businesses, and I would watch them spend off the top line revenue. And then they would get themselves in trouble, right? Because they still had cost of goods and they still had all these things that they had to pay for. And they would over hire, and they, all the things that they did. Well, and even over hire, where they actually had their payroll was astronomical. And they, instead of realizing, oh, we're not making the money for that kind of payroll. So they would get themselves into these, fixes really. And again, they would bleed money, but they didn't get it. They don't get, hey, just because that money's coming in, it's not all yours to spend. You don't get that amount. That is not yours to spend. So, it's interesting that you're bringing this up, but that's a typical thing. But even, believe it or not, even people in business don't understand it.
I know.
So it's not just other people. People in business don't even understand it.
Well, and again, I would leave it to you to steer this conversation where you feel it's most valuable, but there's 5 fundamentals in finance that I think are critical. And if you don't understand them and how the whole equation works, I think most people overly look at one thing, which is the number in the bank account, or the gross revenue.
The revenue, right.
And there's other things in between that matter a lot, profit margin. And one thing that I find really fascinating is this on social media, when someone says, again, at the end of the day, they say, I made $1 million last year. And yeah, they have a nice car and they have a nice home. But what you don't understand is, number one, how many people tried to do that same thing and failed? Number two, how many decades prior were they making mistakes and learning from those mistakes to be able to even reach that? And then number three,
at the past. Yes.
And number three, they only actually have 100 left over of that million in their actual bank account. And then you go something as far as, well, why does Jeff Bezos need $100 billion? He doesn't have $100 billion. He owns 11% of Amazon, which is right. So people don't understand the numbers. And if you don't understand the numbers, in my opinion, again, forgive me, I'm a computer engineer. If you don't understand the numbers, you don't understand the world and the economy and how it works and why it works that way. And so hopefully I can empower people to really realize that you're not as far behind as you think. You can turn this around and make something magnificent, but it probably will never be as magnificent as you think if you think that making $1 million means you have $1 million. Because it's just not the reality.
Well, let's just talk about reality for a minute. And yeah, we didn't mean for this to go down the path of numbers and revenue and all those things. But, while we're on this subject, I think it's really important that people understand the top 1% in the United States. What do you think they make? The top 1%, what is their income? What do you think is the income, the bottom income?
The top 1%, here's what I do know. When I was 25 years old, I was in the top 1% income earners globally. And I made less than $200,000 a year.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was before taxes. That was before, right? And so, but I was not top 1% net worth. And that's the difference, is net worth is much different calculation than income.
But so even at that, Alan, $400,000.
400. Yeah. Okay. And that's way higher than it used to be. And it's increasing exponentially based on the global economy.
Most people would say millions, like, probably 5 million would be the top 1%, or maybe 3 million would be the top 1%. No, it's $400,000 take home. That's it. That's not a huge amount of money. I mean, it's not a huge amount of money.
It's what you do with it. And you can stretch that and you can do a lot with it.
Yeah.
If you're intelligent with your money. Yeah. But that's such an important distinction, because the whole models, popping bottles stuff we've got going on the internet, it's very not real. It's a giant show. And I hope entrepreneurs understand that you're better off building a real brick and mortar business in the real world, helping real people with real products and services, not putting CEO in your Instagram bio and hoping it all works out. I mean, there's certain people who are very successful with tried and true fundamentals. And if you stick with the fundamentals, even in the 21st century, I'm so convinced that you can really build something magnificent. So yeah, hopefully that's valuable.
Well, the opportunities are there like they've never been before, but it just like building, I built a lot of businesses and sold them, and I've done it offline and I've done it on, I've built online, and they all took work. I just want to say that none of them were easy. None of them were easy. All of them took investing. All of them took work. All of them were blood, sweat, and tears. I don't care. There was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and mistakes and pitfalls. And that is part of business and entrepreneurship. But so, Alan, what is success to you?
Hey, it's Ann here, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I have to ask you, would you like to level up and scale up your coaching or consulting business and go into that $500,000, $1 million or beyond, maybe even in the next year? Well, if it's a big yes for you, then I want to invite you to apply to my next free 2-day virtual event. You do not want to miss this. These are the same strategies I use in my business and the same strategies I teach my high-paying clients so that they can have explosive growth and do it with a premium business. So go apply now, because I have had people make money right out of my free workshops. All you need to do is go to expertinyouworkshop.com, apply to attend, and I'll see you on the inside. Now back to the show.
I would love to hear how you define success.
So first and foremost, thank you for calling a spade a spade. I appreciate that. All of them took work, right? You sure it wasn't 4 hours a week, right? The 4 hour work week. Okay.
Never.
I'm being playful. Yeah. Well, I want time freedom. It's like, well, guess what that takes? Time for decades.
Well,
right?
it's like passive income. Now we could go down a whole nother rabbit hole
exactly.
when we talk about passive income. I get so tired of hearing people talk about passive income. I said, there is nothing passive, people. There is nothing passive.
Exactly. There's active income, and that's it. Yeah.
That's right.
What does success mean to me? Success means health, wealth, and love. I want to be healthier, wealthier, and more in love every day. And knowing that I never will have any perfect day. Mm-hmm. Health to me is physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Physical first, most important. Mm-hmm. And I took my health for granted. I was drinking too much and too often. Prior to my car accident, I just was not taking fitness seriously. So that's a big part of success for me.
Is that a big part too of what you kind of help with your clients with as well? Because I'm like you, I believe it's everything. It's it's everything.
Holistic.
When we talk about success, it's all areas of your life: spiritual, health, wealth, family, fun, even fun. Mm-hmm.
Even fun. I love it.
Even fun. Yeah.
We have to say that as business. Even fun. It's funny. It's so funny.
Well, it's not natural. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. we gotta schedule that in, right?
Yes.
We have plans to make plans. I love it.
It's true.
But holistic. Success is holistic. Success to me is health, wealth, and love. Health being physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Wealth, number one, is how you make your money. Mm-hmm. Meaning, not do you love every day, not do you love every second. That's not real. That's a fugazi. But are you passionate about what you do, and is it within your purpose for a profit? And in the past, I was doing stuff I didn't like to make money, and now I'm doing things that are challenging but meaningful. Mm-hmm. Okay. So the first is how you make your money. The second is how much you make. And what matters more than anything isn't just how much you make, but is it increasing or decreasing?
Is it increasing what?
Is it increasing or decreasing?
Oh, increasing or decreasing. Right.
So for example, if you work for a newspaper right now, paper newspaper, it isn't to say you can't innovate, isn't to say you can't go online. But I would say if you're a truck driver, my mom was a truck driver working for a newspaper, Telegram and Gazette. There's just not a future there. And that's the cold, hard reality. There's just not a future there. Okay. So I have a friend of mine who's a machinist, and I have mentors that own robotics companies, and I was a computer engineer. I worked in automation for years. I mean, robots are coming, whether we like it or not. It's all happening, and it's going to happen forever. And unfortunately, the less skilled, less educated population tends to grow statistically faster than the more educated population, and the jobs that require less education are actually being automated quicker than anything else. So we're in trouble in the future, in my honest opinion. And that's why I try to help people retool. That's what you're doing as well. So I appreciate that. But anyways, is it going up or down? I don't care if you make $10 an hour. If it's going up, good for you.
Yes. So you're
right.
That's right.
It's a ladder. Jim Rohn says it's a ladder. It's not a bed.
Well, and let's just say it should be going up, because if it's not, you're declining. Yeah. If you're not growing it, and I think, you can look at your income, you can look at your revenue. If you're not in business and you work, are you seeing improvement in what you are doing? That is a good indication. Is my life getting better, or is it going backwards?
Yes, 100%. Even though it's up and down, the trend line can be up.
Yes.
Right.
100%.
So the day-to-day is up and down, but the trend line has to be up. The slope of the trend line. Again, forgive me for all the mathematics. All right. The last one for wealth is where you invest it. Mm-hmm. Where you invest it. And that means gym membership. That means potentially personal trainer. I personally have a therapist. I pay out of pocket for that. I invest in the best team I can find. Mm-hmm. Right? That kind of thing. And then number 3 is love, which is intimate relationship first and foremost. Immediate family, friends, mentors, mentees, colleagues, clients, business partners, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I used to be really successful in corporate and in the economy. I was a 1% earner in my mid-20s, my early 20s. Mm-hmm. I paid off $84,000 worth of debt in a single year, and I had $150,000 in an investment account. And they were all tech companies, and they were all doing very well. But what I can tell you is I was not holistic and I was not fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying not to focus on wealth, because I went all the way past broke as an entrepreneur as well. And trust me, that also sucks, even though I was fulfilled and broke.
Right. I'd rather be making money than not. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So I joke, I was born, my father passed away, my stepdad, we did fairly well. Then I went from fairly well to all the way broke.
So you've been both ends of the spectrum.
Yep.
Yes.
And then I went all the way back to 1% earner in the US back then. Global earner, not in the US. And then I went all the way back to broke.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm finally passing my old best.
Mm-hmm.
But at least now I'm fulfilled and I'm doing something that's deeply meaningful. And so I hope that everyone takes that same roller coaster and does it better than I did. But that's what success means to me, is health, wealth, and love. And I told Emilia this, my beautiful girlfriend, my future wife. I adore her. She's my favorite person in the entire world. And she's the greatest gift of my life. And I said, I don't want to end up at the top of this mountain without us being in love.
Mm-hmm. I love it that you're talking about this.
Oh, thank you.
How many entrepreneurs do we see? How many people? Well, not just entrepreneurs. How many people do we see? Everything, success at all costs, wealth at all costs. They destroy relationships along the way. Everything falls apart around them. Their health falls apart. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. That's why I really just believe it needs to be well-rounded. I've been married. My husband and I are getting ready to go to Jamaica next week to celebrate our 42nd anniversary.
42nd. Talk 42nd. About a small percentage. That is, you are in the smallest percentile there is. Yes. You're in the top 0.00001% of people who have been married for 42 years. I am proof. I'm proof that you can do it. I'm proof you can have great family. You can have a great marriage. You can be healthy. You can love your life, love your business, have success, all of those things. And have a strong faith. I have a very strong faith. And that to me, that's what it is all about. So it's not about lopsided, right? It's not about you're great here and this all is in the toilet. Yes. My hero growing up, as maybe you've sensed, was Steve Jobs. And I've since reevaluated. And again, I'm not against Steve. I'm not for Steve necessarily, but I will say that he took his health took a backseat.
Right.
And I just decided after 26 that I never want to do that. And his relationships took a backseat too. And yes, he changed the world. And yes, I have a quote behind me: those who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And I still appreciate and respect what he accomplished. But health, wealth, and love, holistic success. And I'm grateful that I woke up earlier than some people do when it comes to that.
Yes. And I'm glad that you're also using that wake up call to help other people as well. So, Alan, this has been so great. I told you 20 minutes, we're going to go 20 minutes, and here it's been 45. So this has been such a rich conversation, and I've just really loved talking to you. And I just love everything you're doing and everything you stand for, and just the impact that you're making in the world. So congratulations for all of that. And thank you for what you're doing.
And you're so sweet. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. I appreciate the sincerity. I appreciate this. This is a rich conversation. I like the way you described that. And I used to have a podcast way back in the day called Conversations Change Lives. And then Kevin and I met up and created the worst podcast name of all time, which was Conversations Change Lives meets Hyperconscious Podcasts. When we teamed up, we just combined names. And then eventually we rebranded to Next Level University. But Conversations do change lives. That's why I named my podcast that way back, way back, 8 years ago now. And this conversation has changed my life and hopefully your listeners' lives as well, because I just don't think deep I don't want to talk about the weather, Ann. I don't want to talk about...
Right.
I remember I was at Thanksgiving and I love our families, Emilia and I's families, so deeply, but they were talking about, did you see Cher's hair during the Thanksgiving parade? And I was just in my head. I was like, I can't do it. I don't care.
Or if you're like me, I'm like, who?
Yeah, exactly. I can't.
I do know who Sharon.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
but you know, so many people. If you don't keep up in that world, I'm like, who? I don't know who you're talking about.
Cher's hair? Why? What are we doing here? I mean, I don't care. I can't pretend to care.
Right.
Maybe that's them. You do you. But I shut off the moment I heard that. As Jim Rohn says, say things that matter to people who care. I'm all for that. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for having me. And it has been meaningful, and I appreciate it.
How can people get a hold of you, Alan? By the way, he is on LinkedIn. Are you on Facebook and Instagram too? Or what platforms are you on?
Yeah, I do Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn.
Okay. And how can they get a hold of you?
So you can email me, alan@nextleveluniverse.com. We got all kinds of cool stuff going on. Just if you do ever email me or reach out, please provide context. As with all of us, I get a lot of spam mail. So please don't, spam me or anything like that. And just provide context so that I know it's not spam, more importantly. And then, as I had mentioned to you, Ann, you can go to my website, nextleveluniverse.com. So the podcast is Next Level University, spelled just like it sounds. You can Google it. It'll come up on everything. And then nextleveluniverse.com. The URL for Next Level University is the person is very much overcharging. So we decided to do nextleveluniverse.com, and everything's on there. We have a book club. We have, these planners that we do called the Dreamliner. We've got monthly meetups that we do for free. We've got online courses that are free. We've got all kinds of cool stuff on there. So reach out anytime with my email, alan@nextleveluniverse.com. You can go to the website, or you can check me out on social.
And we'll make sure all of the links are in the show notes as well. So, Alan, thank you so much for being my guest today. It was so much fun to talk to you and let you share your perspective and what you're doing. So I appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. It was an honor. Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. Make sure you share this podcast and make sure you subscribe to the show as well. We love to hear your feedback. I love to hear your comments. And if there's something in particular that you want me to do on this show or talk about on this show, then please give us that feedback as well. God bless you and go rock your business. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
If you've enjoyed this show, then I want to invite you to check out a free automated webinar where I show you how you can bring in ultra high fee clients for $25,000 to $125,000 or even more. I show you how you can do this maybe even in the next 7 to 60 days. So if you want to check out that free webinar, just go to expertinyouaccelerator.com and I'll see you on the inside. You have an amazing day, and until next time, God bless you. Go rock your business.